We saw, unfortunately, a situation with Colonial Pipeline that got hit with a ransomware attack. And one of the things that is quite alarming is the amount of ransom that's associated with some of these attacks now.
Yeah.
If you were the CISO for BP and they got hit with such an attack, can I ask the question, would you advise the CFO to pay the ransom? What's the situation with OT and paying ransoms?
So obviously the problem with OT is the negative impact is immediate.
Right.
You're talking about technology which in most forms is controlling some form of real-time function, whether it's a manufacturing line, whether it's a oil pipeline, whether it's a drilling rig. And therefore, the decision timescale is so constrained. Yeah. The loss impact is increasing like that. So as you can tell, though, I'm not going to give you a simple answer. So there are occasions where it is a valid decision to make, to pay a ransom.
Yeah.
But of course, you can never make those decisions in isolation. You need to understand the broader social context, social, economic, political context for those decisions. There will be certain places in the world where if you make that decision, you're laying yourself open to prosecution if a link can be drawn between the attacker and organized crime or terrorism.
Yeah.
Still worse.
Yeah.
So it's really complicated.
Yeah.
But there are certainly some occasions where paying the ransom is a valid decision to consider.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's always important to make that decision based on the specifics.
Yeah.
So there isn't no single rule.
Yeah.
So if I'm the CISO at some large major medical institution,
yes,
and their lives dependent on it,
yeah,
what am I going to do? Of course, I'm going to consider paying the ransom. Yeah. And indeed, today's state of ransomware is probably fueled to quite a large degree by the outbreaks of targeting of medical institutions in the US that happened or started 6-7 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And that's not a criticism of that sector, by the way. But look, I mean, you can avoid being in a position where you have to make that decision. It's difficult to avoid being targeted with ransomware. It can be very difficult once you've been targeted to avoid some negative impact.
Yeah.
Just go and talk to the people at Maersk and Merck. I mean, I know that wasn't associated with extortion. NotPetya was not targeted. It's collateral damage for, nation state action. But you talk to them about the seconds, the minutes, the evolution of the attack, and you understand just how difficult it is. But it is really easy to take some both preventive and preparatory recovery action.
Okay.
So focus on your backups.
Right.
Focus, if you're talking about OT, focus on restart processes, restart procedures.
Yeah.
If it's a pipeline, having actually the very first time I had to consider operational technology or process control systems, as we called them then, was actually when I was at BP, and BP actually made some very good early ground in that space. Not my doing, but my predecessor, Paul Dorey. Excellent work done, and some of that work was about, well, okay, how do you fail safe, and how do you recover operation?
Yes, yes, yeah.
So, in fact,
yeah. So it's
if
not like an IT backup.
No, exactly.
It takes
it's a whole process.
Yeah.
It's not just having data that you can recover, but it's a whole process and a whole way of thinking. And certainly oil and gas has that way of thinking embedded into their engineering sort of DNA. So, I mean, there's lots of lessons that can be learned from wider other industry sectors about how you prepare. So try and avoid having to answer that question.
Yeah.
Should we pay the ransom?
Yeah.
That's my best advice.
Okay. And Steve, just on that point, it certainly looks like, as I say, not considering a state of compromise, but going through some kind of scenarios, simulations, and not doing it as a one-off exercise, but making sure that everybody in a leadership role in the organization is familiar in terms of what to do. Any thoughts around that?
It's true, Nick, and I was just sitting here thinking while John was talking, we're moving to this response, aren't we, rather than prevention?
That's
because
right.
prevention, okay, but the key to it really is the response. And as you know, we do advocate the running of what we call cyber scenario exercises, the raising of awareness, particularly with leaders of key functions across the organization, rehearsal for the day when things do go wrong.
Yeah.
And it's about building that into the organizational DNA so that it's no different for me from a fire alarm test.
Yes.
Everybody does that. We consider that to be, embedded into the way that we run businesses.
Yes.
And I think that obviously on a much larger scale, potentially, that's the sort of thing that we need to be doing. It is about having the playbook so that people know where to go when something happens. What do we do? Because when something like this does hit an organization, there is no shortage of noise. Everybody wants an answer. Everybody wants, something to everybody wants to talk to you.
Yes.
You think about people who've gone through that process. You need to be very, very disciplined.
Yes.
About who's going to talk to the press, who's going to talk to the customer base.
Absolutely.
Who's going to focus on actually getting the systems back up and running, assessing the extent of the damage, all of that kind of thing. And these are roles that need to be carved out well beforehand, need to be practiced, rehearsed, and frankly, you need to train people how to respond in those situations.
Yeah.
And that's where we've now, I think, where we now have to move.
Yes.
And again, that's not easy to do in large organizations. We've talked about, how easy it might be in a mid-size or a small. Each of them are very, very different.
Yeah.
Small organizations probably don't see the relevance, the need. I back everything up in the cloud.
Yeah.
That's the way I do things. Large organizations have got other things that are going on. So we shouldn't underestimate the size of the task. I just think that, again, it's about evolving to that happy state, if you like, where we accept that we are going to come under attack. So therefore, we do need to know how to respond to it, and we need to train for that.
Yeah.
And when you express it in those sorts of terms, people tend to get it because it makes sense.
Yeah, that's right.